Well, we will get started. I'm just going to do a brief introduction and then pass it along because I am definitely no expert and we have a ton of experts on this call. So I am Lily. I'm the founder and CEO of Auggie. I'm also a toddler mom. I'm also pregnant, so I will be a listener on this conversation. If you're not familiar with Auggie, but hopefully you are by now, what we are is half a community for parents. So we invite you to connect, get vulnerable, and share and seek wisdom. And then we take all of the amazing recommendations that you share and we make them shoppable on Auggie.com, the marketplace. Now, I'm so excited for this event. A few just housekeeping things. One, feel free to use the Q&A box to ask questions. Marianne, who is our community manager, will be moderating it and making sure all of those questions get answered. We are also doing a giveaway, so stick around to the end. We're doing 1 year of Maple Plus, which is life-saving for the mental load. 6 months access to the Parent Pivot Pack with Anna, so amazing. And then a Mom Project swag bag, which I want for myself, Elizabeth. And then an amazing Willow discount code will be sent to everyone after the event. So use the Q&A, an amazing giveaway coming. And then I'll pass it along to everyone for you guys to do your intros. It doesn't make sense for me to do them for you. So very excited, and I will pass it along.
Okay, great. I'm Marianne, also from the Auggie team. Like Lily said, I'm going to be helping to moderate this discussion. And I am in Austin, and I have 3 kids, 5 and under. And so I've had a few back to work transitions, all at different companies. So really excited to hear perspectives from this group, and maybe share some of my own as we go along the way. So Elizabeth, do you want to start?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Shackelford. I am the Senior Manager of Brand and Communications at the Mom Project. If you're not familiar with the Mom Project, it is a digital talent marketplace that connects moms, dads, and allies with our amazing opportunities with our customer partners. I am a mom. I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. I live in Houston, and I'm so excited to talk about the return to work, parental leave. I talk with our community a lot about, what it looks like to be a working parent, reentering the workforce, and I hear so many insights from amazing people, so I'm excited to sit here and talk with you all. Okay, I will tap it to Anna.
Hi, thanks. My name is Anna McKay. I'm the founder of Parents Pivot. I'm also a coach. I've been a coach since 2008, and I've made several career pivots and transitions along the way. I was an expat twice in the Philippines and Beijing, and now live in Houston, and am the mom to 2 girls. And so throughout those pivots, those career pivots, I've seen parents manage those transitions. And that's where my coaching focuses on supporting parents at pivotal points at the intersection of work and life, like returning to paid work after a career pause, navigating parental leave, and managing life as a leader at home and a leader at work. So, all right, Lauren.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Esel. I'm the head of family experience at Maple. If you don't know us, we are a family app and we help families share in household responsibilities. It is my job to ensure that all of our Maple families have their home running smoothly. So I'm very excited to talk to you today about how we can sort of support you in this navigating return to work. I've done that twice. I have 2 boys, ages 6 and 8. It was very, very hard for me to go back to work after having my babies. So this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. Melissa, do you want to take it over?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Melissa Schmeiser. I am a mom coach at Willow and a CLC as well. So I'm so happy to be here talking about navigating returning to work. I have a son who is 21 months old, and I'm currently expecting our second. So I will have done this transition now soon to be 2 times with 2 different companies. It's definitely a big transition, a lot of emotions, but it is something I'm super passionate about. And I, love connecting with moms. I connect with moms all day, every day with our Willow pump services for the Willow Go and for our Willow 360 pump. And so I'm really excited to be here and talk to you all. I'm also based in outside Chicago.
Awesome. Well, as you can see, we have an all-star lineup. This is one of my favorite groups to work with on our virtual events. So really, really grateful that you all made the time to join us today. Okay, I'm going to kick it off with our first kind of question / prompt. And so for someone who is planning their parental leave, how can I set myself up for success going into my parental leave?
Yeah. I'd love to take that one. So I think one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to evaluate what you're working on now, what kind of supports you need at home and at work, and to think through this leave intentionally. It's a great opportunity at work to reset and say, okay, what is it that I want to stop, start, and continue at work? It's a great opportunity to take a look at some of those things that you're doing at work that may not be adding the most value. Take those off your plate immediately and start to evaluate which things you want to hand off at work, which things with the idea in mind about what you want to take on when you return. So thinking about what you want to delegate when you leave and identifying support partners, and then thinking about how you might want to come back and how those partners might fit in to support your transition back. So, yeah.
I would love to jump into, if that's okay. I just wanted to touch a little bit on home. As you're going into parental leave, it's really important to sit down with your partner and talk about expectations. What does parental leave look like for the two of you? What does it mean to share responsibilities at home? What is your plan for birth? What is your plan for after the hospital? Mom's going to be recovering. So really talk through the expectations for how your partner is going to support you during that time. And this is a time that a tool can be very helpful for you. I don't want to push Maple on everyone. It is free to use, but if you use pen and paper and that works for you, that's wonderful. I want you to really think about how to centralize all your information and figure out how you can get everybody's schedules on the same page in one area so that everyone has oversight on who's doing what and when. That makes sure that important appointments get met by everybody and everybody's aware of them. You can share baby prep to-dos. You can get family support like a meal train. Go through all of that now. And I like how Anna said, be really intentional. Think through what you want this time period to look like.
And I'll add too, from the work perspective, that it's unfortunate that the playbook ultimately falls on the mom or the person taking parental leave to kind of figure out what that looks like for them. But I think what you need to think about before you go on leave is, what does your communication with your team, with your manager look like, and establish those boundaries ahead of time. Do you want to be contacted? Do you want to be updated as things go on? Or are you just like, I'm out? Do you want to have a check-in with your boss before you go back to work, just to kind of get your head in the game? And then also like set your boundaries when you return early. Like I have to take, I'm leaving at 4:30 to go pick up my son, but I'll be back online. Just think about your boundaries and how you want to set those up, because if you don't have them set up for yourself, it's easy for other people to kind of encroach on those, and you won't have the guidelines set up at the top to really set the standard.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to add in, we use an action planning template with our clients navigating parental leave to help really kind of map out all the different tasks that are out there, and so that you can have those clear lines of communication with your bosses for sure. Yeah, great.
Kind of hopping off of that, just in regards to setting up yourself proactively for success. If you are planning to continue breastfeeding and pumping at work, you want to make sure you are proactive and know your setup, whether you're going into an office or if you are working from home. Be able to know if you're like blocking your calendar for specific pumping times, knowing what your pumping room is available in your office, if you're able to store your pump parts, clean your pump parts. All of those types of things can be super stressful if you leave them until the last second. So planning them in advance with your employer, knowing not just planning just your pump time, but also all of the time that goes into prepping yourself, cleaning your pump parts, storing your milk, traveling to and from work, all of those things are super important. So setting yourself up proactively is vital, and making sure you have the accessories that you need, whether that's a pump like the Willow pump that you can bring to and from work easily. If you need a cooler like the milk cooler that we offer, those types of things really, really help to make sure you're making it as easy as possible, because pumping is like another full-time job too, if you are planning on doing that.
Yeah, I did want to add one more thing while you were talking, Melissa, that I just thought of. My employer, when I had my first baby, while I was pregnant in the office, I was already starting to have some anxiety over coming back to work. As crazy as that sounds, I was still in the workplace and I already had anxiety about coming back. I sat with my boss and I basically just said, listen, do we have any flexibility if I'm having a hard time with returning back to work? And at that point, she said, absolutely. If you need to like be at home for a couple of days and call in and work remotely, we can do that. If you want to work half days for the first couple of weeks, see what sort of flexibility and arrangement you can come up with ahead of time, so that it helps you feel a little bit more relaxed going into parental leave.
That all resonated with me. So thank you guys so much for your take on that one. I guess this question may be more for Melissa and maybe Elizabeth, but we touched on going back to work and pumping. Melissa, you kind of helped us segue into that topic, which is a big part of this, especially if you are planning to breastfeed or pump. What accommodations should people ask for when they're related to feeding, when they're going back to work? Like, what is their employer obligated to provide? Or are there things that you can ask for above and beyond what they're obligated to provide to set yourself up for even more success?
Yeah, that is a great question and a great point. So again, being proactive with this, your employer is legally needs to give you an allotted amount of time that you need to advocate for pumping breaks throughout the day. So I would say work that out with your employer much ahead of the time that you are planning on going back to work, so you know your situation. And you are legally allowed to have, a pumping room that is not a closet, definitely not a bathroom. You want this to be a room where you have the privacy to pump, but you do have all the supplies that you need, such as a really comfortable chair to sit in. You have a sink to wash your pump parts. You have a little fridge to store your milk. And if you have the room to yourself, you have the keys to that room. That's kind of the situation that I had at my old employer. I was the only pumping mom, so I ended up like basically having the room to yourself. But these are all things that you want to set up in advance, so you know exactly what your situation is before you go back to work. Willow does have a super amazing resource on our website that I'm happy to send out to everyone after this call as well. But it kind of goes through all your specific rights, what you can ask for, how to advocate. All of those things are just spelled out perfectly on the Willow website. So I always direct moms there if they do have questions about what they're legally allowed, how they advocate for themselves, how long are my pump breaks going to be. All of those questions are spelled out there.
And in addition to those legal protections that you have, you are legally protected. I think some practical things is talk to your manager. Even if you're not, like, just talk to your manager and kind of let them know the situation. And the other thing is protect your time and energy. Block the time in your calendar, like Melissa said. And if you're comfortable or you work at a workplace where you feel like you can do this, list pumping or feeding so that people know that you are kind of out. And something that someone said in a webinar one time that was super helpful is enlist a colleague to help you when you are out pumping. So if they're in a meeting and you can't be there, like, make sure that they're taking notes for you or fill you in afterwards. Because I think that's sometimes what's hard is you come back from mat leave, you're trying to figure out pumping, you're missing things, you feel bad for missing things. Well, that's a me thing, but I don't know if anyone else relates, but you feel bad because you're still taking time away. And like, don't feel bad, have someone help you. And like getting someone on your team, literally and figuratively, really helps you feel secure at work.
Awesome. Anna or Lauren, do you guys have anything to add before we move on to our next topic?
When
Go ahead,
I,
Lauren.
Sorry, when I pumped back in the day for the first time at work, I did not have like a special sink, so I had to go into the office kitchen and wash my pump in the kitchen. And I will never forget the first time I did this. I was the first parent, besides like senior leadership who was a little bit older. I was the first parent among sort of my team to be pumping at work. And I just remember like having a good laugh with my colleagues because they were like, what is that? And I found that the more humorous I made the situation and just sort of talked it through and let them know, the less awkward it was. And people would full on offer to like move stuff out of the fridge. So I had a place to put all of my milk, and they were just very supportive once I opened up that discussion. So don't feel uncomfortable at all to talk about it.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know if we actually referenced the Pump Act, which is that that act that was passed recently that that kind of requires that employers offer you the space. So just so y'all know that.
And we did just get a question in the Q&A box related to this topic. So I'm just going to jump in and ask it now. Are you legally protected regarding pumping if your company is in a right to work state and under 50 people? I guess like are there limitations on, you know, the type of company or the size of company in terms of those protections, or is it totally universal?
It is universal, so you're legally protected when it comes to pumping at work across all 50 states. And it does not matter the company size, just so you know, that's under the Pump Act.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so I think we touched on this a little bit, but like as a new parent, you know, you've gone through birth or you've brought a baby home for the first time, regardless of how that transpired. And you are, you know, you've transformed in a lot of ways, right? And maybe you're feeling like a totally different person at the end of your leave. How can you set yourself up for success when you are actually at the point where you're returning to work and you're just trying to figure out how to, you know, it's a loaded question.
Yeah.
So yeah, Anna, I know you're eager to answer this.
I am. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think there are a couple of things here. There's on the home front, there's on the professional front. Parenting and becoming a parent is something that is a huge transition personally that we don't often acknowledge professionally, but there are so many ways that we change that make us better at our jobs too. And I think reflecting on people used to say that to me all the time before I had kids, and I'm like, what do you mean? And after becoming a parent, it's abundantly clear all the things that happen. A couple of those things, you know, just include you have to think about somebody else, and you have to plan for somebody else, and you have to think through how logistics and operations are going to work that don't involve just you know? So that conveys to a team and leading a team and managing a team. Your brain rewires when you are caring for a young human, and it actually as your child or as you're caring for your new baby, whether you're the mom or the dad, if you invest time caregiving, your brain rewires and makes it more open for empathy. And so you develop the skills of empathy as a parent and caregiver, and that makes you a better leader as well. And so I think those are just a few of the parenting transferable skills. I think in addition, you know, I know Lauren touched on this earlier, setting yourself up for success in terms of what kind of support do I need? Who do I need to enlist on my team at home and at work? How can I get all my caregiving partners on the same page about how we are going to care for this baby and for this child? And I know I do some work with Fair Play and talking about how do we, you know, okay, feeding the baby is going to be my responsibility. Maybe waking up and changing diapers is going to be another caregiver's responsibility. Maybe planning playtime is going to be another caregiver's responsibility. Just kind of delegating out all the different responsibilities so that the baby knows that they have more than one person, several caregivers that they can rely on for support. And definitely use the Maple app because that's really helpful in organizing all this stuff. So
It's so hard, whether your baby goes to daycare or you get an in-home caregiver, it is really hard. Can we just like acknowledge the elephant in the room? You are not meant to leave your newborn baby. And so as a mom, as a parent, when you leave your newborn baby, you're going to be feeling a lot of feelings, and that's totally natural because you shouldn't have to leave your baby, but a lot of us have to. Over 70% of moms work. So the way to sort of help yourself in that situation is just get really organized and try to work with your caregiver in a way that makes you feel like you guys are on the same page. So establish routines. Take them through what your baby likes, doesn't like, what you don't like. Really put and centralize all that information into one place. Again, we use Maple. You can share it with anyone. You can work together inside the app. But if you don't want to do that, find another system that works for you, that helps you get on the same page with schedules, feeding, routines, any, medical issues maybe that you have or your baby has or anything, and just get all of that centralized now.
Yeah, that is a great point. Staying proactive and organized, whether that's your pumping supplies or knowing when, to give yourself grace. I think for me, it was really hard to go back, even though I was remote and I got to see my son a lot more than many other moms. And I feel super, super blessed that that was my situation. But it was really hard on the days where I had to go in or I was away from him. He was at daycare. I felt like looking at pictures while I was pumping really helped. Being able to FaceTime him sometimes when he was with grandparents really helped. And then I think for me, I'm like a meditation person and someone who's really, really into mindfulness and being present. I felt like going back to work really taught me when I was home. I left my work when I was with my son, and I cherished the times even more, and I was super, super present. So I think having that mindset is really important because you're not going to be with your baby for the full day anymore. And you got to give yourself grace. There's going to be some really hard days in the transition, but knowing that you will see them at the end of the day and you do get however many hours and minutes, just cherish those minutes. And if you have a really good support group, I was blessed enough to have a lot of family and a lot of mom friends that I was able to text, but Willow does offer Emma. It's a chat, and it's like if you just need a 5-minute pickup, you could just go on our app, type in a question, need some motivation, need to get through this day. It's all women centered, about women's health, focused on women. I highly recommend using that too, especially if you feel like you don't know who to text or, it just depends on your situation. I just think that that's a super, super helpful tool to just get that little bit of motivation to get through the day.
Absolutely. I love Emma. It's an AI focused health app for women, and it's just specifically for maternal health. And so that's really cool that y'all offer that at Willow. That's awesome.
It's incredible.
Something that came to mind in my experience, like resonated with me as you guys were talking is, it's, I think during my maternity leaves, like you're solely focused, like your job is taking care of that baby and feeding that baby. And like, you're trying to establish a schedule and like everything I became upset. Like I'm a project manager. Like I was like project managing my baby's day, right? Like I was like, these are the wake windows and these are the naps and these are and tracking every ounce and every half ounce. And it was like, I don't think for me, it was to the point of being like, too much anxiety, but like I felt very like in control of what I could control. Shifting to having someone else step in for the childcare was really hard of just like, I had to be really careful not to obsess about every little thing that was going on while I was away and couldn't control. So I think to Lauren's point about setting up those routines and making, as long as you have those routines set up, and you trust your caregiver, my advice would be to just like try to let go a little bit of the minutia of the day, like the specific ounces or the minutes of the nap or the minutes of the wake window. Like as long as, again, as long as you have a, a trusted relationship with who is taking care of that baby, like they're safe, they're loved, and it's all going to be okay if, the nap is, you know, 30 minutes instead of 60 minutes, or if they take 4.5 ounces instead of 5. Like those are, I mean, it sounds silly, like rehashing it like that, but like that is real, right? Like I would get those daycare updates in the app and be like, oh my gosh, like he only took 3 out of 5 ounces, like he's not going to sleep tonight. Like, and you just start to spiral. And so I would just provide the perspective that it's really, really hard, but it is also like going to be okay as long as your baby is safe and loved, and just control what you can control. So
I remember when I would pick up my like a 3-month-old son, and he'd be so tired after daycare because he didn't nap at all.
yeah.
It was like so wonky, and then he would just like sleep on my chest, and it was like the best part of the day. But I just from like a practical work standpoint, I think too, think about if you have any flex time to kind of on-ramp yourself back into work. Can you work 4 days a week, have a day off? Like think about kind of what you could do or what your company offers. The other thing that I would recommend is try to start childcare like a week before. So you get into a routine is a like light. I use that lightly, but get into kind of some sort of, what to expect. So you're not like dropping your baby off or, leaving your baby with the nanny and running to, it's just too much. So try to onboard care. And then that way you can like go get your hair cut. Like for me, I had to get new clothes that fit, or I had, you just want to look and feel your best too. And I really had a hard time going back to work, but there was a moment, there was a moment when they were at school and I had like a hot cup of coffee by myself at my desk. And it was like, oh, this is nice. And you kind of feel a little bit more like yourself. There's a little part of your old self that's like, hey, I'm still here. And that also feels nice. So if you're struggling with like, should I feel guilty? I'm kind of excited. I think like two things are not mutually exclusive. So know that you can hold space for both of those things.
Yeah, such a great point. So I see we have 2 questions in the Q&A that both actually sort of relate to the next question I was going to ask you guys. So I will ask the question we had planned, and then I'm going to sort of loop in the 2 questions from the Q&A so we can cover it all in the same chunk. So what are some tips? Oh, sorry. What if you determine that your current employer may not be a good fit for your current lifestyle? So maybe you went on leave, you're returning, you're planning to return, but now you're having second thoughts about either your employer being supportive of you or, and again, to the questions in the chat, someone asked about, what if I decide I might not want to go back to work at all, due to childcare costs and having to be in the office? Or a second question, how to approach the conversation of wanting to go back to work part-time. So sorry, that was like a 3-parter, but I think it's all related, right? It's like how to determine, what is the right fit for you coming back to work if your previous situation is maybe not still it.
Yeah. So I'll take that one. I oftentimes find that my clients are at this point. They're trying to assess whether or not they want to return, and how they want that return to look. And so I think it's really important to take the time. I mean, you've got a natural pause in your work when you're on maternity leave. So take that time to reflect about what it is that you want and what it is that, like, if something's not sitting well with you about your current work situation, what is that? Trying to dig in and really uncover, like, what specifically is it that is not working? Is that possible to change? I know we talk about design thinking and coaching work, and part of that is assessing whether something is a gravity problem or not. And so gravity problems are things that you can't do anything about. When you can take a look at what what's happening in your workplace? Is it a gravity problem that you just can't do anything about? And so then maybe it's time for a change, or is it something that you could do something about? Is there some conversation that you need to have? Is there an assumption that you're making that you need to check out and see if that assumption is true? Is it possible to work part-time? Would your company, would your boss be open to another alternative work arrangement? So I think checking in on some of those assumptions, drilling down to what's really important to you and what's really critical, and reflecting on that. And I know there are lots of ways to evaluate places of employment. And I know the Mom Project works with a lot of companies that are family friendly and family focused. Indeed also has a work well-being tool that you can use to assess kind of whether companies are family friendly or not. So.
And I think too, if you instinctually know that it might not be the right fit, it probably isn't. And that's okay. Like your career evolves. It's not linear. And sometimes you might need to take a back seat, meaning family comes first and work comes second. And that's okay. Like there's ebbs and flows. And I think that's the hardest part too, is like this stopgap from being this, you're climbing the corporate ladder and then you have a child and you're like, wait a minute, maybe I don't want to climb so fast. And so it is okay to take a step back. And I think if you want to approach the conversation about going part-time, I would also take stock of your company. Are there other people working part-time? Can you make it work? Can you job share with someone? So really kind of look holistically at what your company offers or what they can offer or they have in the past, and then have a really honest conversation. I love my job. I'm committed to my work, but ultimately this might work better for my family, and see what they say. And if they say no, then you have your answer, and that's fine. And then you can go and look for something else. But I think be honest with yourself, and it's okay if things aren't the right fit, because that often happens. And I think all of us here can attest to like being somewhere and being like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't the right place. And that's okay. And if you don't want to go back to work, I would also check with HR or, your benefits, and just make sure that you don't have to pay anything back. If you did have paid leave, sometimes there's stipulations like you have to come back to work for a month or you have to pay it all back. So take a look at that. But I also think that's totally normal, and like your mind changes and things change, and that's okay.
I think that's such a good point, Elizabeth. The other thing I just wanted to say really quickly is I had, with my second born, fully committed to going back to work full time in the office. I had finally done it with my first, and I was like, oh, I can do this. This is going to be a piece of cake. I've got one under my belt. I can navigate this, no problem. And then my second was born with a medical problem. And I tried to go part-time for a bit. It didn't work because my son had to have a medication for his heart 3 times a day. And I did not trust any caregivers because the medication was really tricky. I didn't trust anybody to give it to him. And so it ended up not working out. And I remember feeling like my whole life was falling apart. And just remember that, sort of when one door closes, another will open. And it's okay to be flexible during this time and allow yourself to like grieve if you want to grieve the fact that parts of your life may not look the same anymore. And that is a natural thing that happens once you have kids. And if you don't end up going back to work, to a job that you think you love so much, that's okay too. You love this, new life, this new person in your life, and it's your job and your duty to take care of them. And after I had left that place of work, I found Maple, and Maple has Family Flex, and you can work the times that work for you and your family. And if I have to take off to go to a doctor's appointment or go to my son's school recital, my CEO is like, 2 thumbs up, have a great time, share pictures, bye, and like shoos me off on my way. So there are companies that are set up to be so supportive of parents, and you will find something that works for you and your family.
Absolutely. Sometimes when we are trying too hard to make things work, we really just need to let it go. Yeah. And you're right, so that we can make room for what needs to happen next in our lives, like this new amazing company. So, yeah.
And just a follow-up question from that discussion that came in the Q&A. what are your guys' take on the timing of these discussions? So like, what if even before I go on leave, I think that maybe there's a chance that I might not want to come back, or that I might want to come back part-time. The person who wrote in said that they will be blocked from their accessing their work email while they're on leave. So they wouldn't have a way to reach their or, is it okay to like reach out via personal email while you're on leave, or should they return and then have that conversation? So I'm sure it depends on the circumstance, but wondering if you guys have any tips regarding the timing of those conversations.
Yeah. I'd say
First, go ahead, Anna.
definitely go ahead and make, Elizabeth, you mentioned this earlier. It's important to have clear ways of communicating with people. So make sure, like, if your work email is blocked, and that's perfectly okay, but make sure you know how to get in touch with like a designated person on your team, somebody that you choose, whether that's your manager or somebody, a designated person that you feel comfortable with communicating with, so that you can kind of check in to see what's going on and what you need to do when you go back, so you're not just surprised. Yeah, go ahead. Elizabeth, did you want to say something?
Yeah, and I think this question is so nuanced because it really depends on your relationship with your manager and your team. So like if you feel like you can have candid conversations about what if I want to do this without having like giving them the like subconscious bias of, oh, she's going to have this baby, and that's what's so hard. And so I think you really have to evaluate your relationship that you have. And if you say it's like people don't really talk about this, I would honestly just wait and see how you feel, and then make the case for you're going to make such an impact when you come back. You just need less time. You just need 20 hours. Like consider how think about all the proactive things that you bring to the office and to the workplace culture: empathy, communication, productivity, problem solving. Like you bring all of these skills. So know that they're still going to have this like rock star employee who's going to make impact to the business, but just at 20 hours a week. So I think you just have to think about your relationship. And then when you frame that conversation, I think this kind of goes back to how do you advocate for yourself? It's also just talking about the impact you're going to make with less time.
That is, yeah, definitely huge. I think it really depends on your relationship with your team and with your manager, and just the nature of your business. I kind of knew I was going to try to go back. I was in like the ticketing and event industry, which was so fun when I didn't have kids. But once I had my son, I mean, I already knew it, but you change so much. And so you always just want to be in the back like of your mind, setting yourself up for success and taking the steps that you need, whether that's internally or externally. If you're looking, you still have a job. It's just always in the back of your mind, what is best for me and my family? Because your family is forever. This is like your everything. And your job is important, and you want to love your job, but you also, at least for most moms I know, family and their kids come first. So I know I was so lucky when I found this job at Willow, and I've never felt more supported in my entire career. And this is just the place that I know I was meant to be as a mom. So they're out there. And I think if you just keep manifesting and saying it to yourself and really putting yourself out there and really like sitting with yourself, understanding what it is you want and where you want to be, things will start to come to you.
And this is just like the best cheer squad. I feel like I'm like in a group therapy session with you guys. This is so great. And I have one more question before we kind of open it up to some Q&A. And I saw some related chats about this in the chat. So there are just so many emotions that come with returning to work. So I mean, just off the top of my head, guilt, exhaustion, anxiety, like new identity, missing your baby. Like there's just so many emotions that come with returning to work. What are some tips you have for managing those emotions? And just to call out for something that was just put in the chat, I actually loved going back to work, but felt guilty for enjoying it. And I love the honesty because same. I mean, well, and it shifted over time. I think like, I went from being like dreading it to being like, oh, maybe I do want to go back to work, to like really relishing like the time to myself and having control of my day again, but then also missing my baby and feeling guilty about, having childcare when other people like are, staying at home with their babies. So that was me rambling for a little while, but I'd love to hear all of your tips for managing all of those sometimes conflicting emotions.
Yeah, I want to talk about the guilt for a moment because sometimes we feel guilt when we are trying to meet somebody else's expectations, not our own expectations. And so reevaluating what's important for you and working towards and focusing on building a work and life situation that works for you and what's important to you, and getting the shoulds out of the way. I think that'd be the first tip.
Oh, I love the thing about guilt because that's so true. I was just thinking about all the things I already feel guilty for. But I also think
Other people's expectations on you, not yours.
literally all of them. I think, oh, sorry, someone else go. My dogs are barking. I'll chime back in.
I was just, Melissa, did you want to go? I don't want to cut you off.
Oh no, I'm just I'm a big advocate in just giving yourself the time to actually have the emotions that you experience when you go back to work. I feel like, at least from my experience, especially at the beginning, I was kind of pushing everything away and just trying to push through. I know a lot of moms just try to push through the day and get through everything. Pushing your feelings down sometimes makes it a bigger issue than it really needs to be when everything kind of bottles up and then there's like a bigger explosion of emotion at the end of a week or 2 weeks, whatever it may be. Letting yourself have the time to process your emotions is super important, and having the support to process those emotions, whether that's your family, your partner, friends, a mom group, a Facebook group. We have a Willow community that I answer questions in all day, and I love cheering on moms and just providing that support. There's so
Auggie.
many, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much out there. And I think having that support is like one of the most important things. So then you don't feel like it's all the weight of the world. It's just always on your shoulders, which a lot of moms, I know, myself included, feel that all the time.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add something personal. Like I haven't shared all the personal things on this call. I really struggled with something called postpartum psychosis. This is something I really want to talk about for just a moment. If you and your partner are not educated on the difference between baby blues, postpartum depression, and postpartum psychosis, and sort of the markers for each, I want you to take a little time and go read about it, because a lot of moms have this post baby and post birth. So there are 3 different stages of sort of postpartum. You have like the blues where you're like a little weepy and sad. Then you have something a little more serious, which is the depression. And then you have something that's really serious, which is the psychosis. And my husband and I were not educated on this. It did not get picked up until it was a little bit too late. But I would have very strong daytime visions of hurting my baby. And so I just want to make sure that if you start to have this, that is a marker for you and your partner to go seek help from the doctor. And I remember not wanting to tell my doctor because I was afraid they were going to take my baby away from me, because I was really mentally unwell. And I was really scared to leave my baby for weeks. Like I didn't want the sun touching him. I didn't want him outside. The household had to be very, very quiet. Like it was showing up in a lot of ways, and I didn't know I needed help. So make sure that both you and your partner, because sometimes you can't recognize the symptoms in yourself, are aware and educated, so you can sort of get the support that you need to help you. There's just so many chemicals going through your body after you've given birth, So make sure that you do some reading on that.
Oh, Lauren, thank you so much for being so vulnerable about that. I feel like on all these calls I get teary, but I mean, I suffered from PPD and anxiety, and you don't know. And I wish someone had said, like, read up on it. And I think that your tip about having your partner read up on it is like, because I think we do all these things to prepare for our baby and think about our bodies are changing. So we're kind of in it. But like having them understand from the outside is so important, and something that I wish I would have done. Because it's not fun to go up to them and be like, I think I might be depressed. Like, you
No.
don't feel it sucks. Because
Yeah.
then it's just the whole thing, you're already like kind of depleted. And so thank you for being vulnerable about that. And that's a really, really, really good tip.
It's really real. Like I remember leaving work and calling my husband and being like, do you think the nanny is putting bleach in his bottles? And he's like, what? And I said, yeah, like, could she be putting bleach in his bottles and there's bleach left over and he's drinking the milk and it's making his tummy upset and that's why he's crying all the time? And he's like, no, the doctor said that he's got colic. And I'm like, but the colic's coming from the bleach. And he's like, Lauren, there's no bleach in the bottles. And I would go home and I would literally get the bleach from our laundry room and I would just dump it down the drain because in my mind, I thought this was something that was happening and it wasn't, but I was unwell. And so it can show up in a lot of different ways. So if you're starting to have some of these symptoms, like go talk to your doctor, talk to your partner, and go, have an appointment and chat about it because there's things that you can do to get help. And she put me on a sleep routine. And once I started sleeping for more than like 4 or 5 hour increments, I was like cured. And it was just like such severe lack of sleep that it was like my mind was doing these things and my chemicals were all out of whack. So really take that seriously, you guys.
Well,
Yeah, I'm
and
so
it
sorry
brings
you
to
went through
mind,
that.
I'd love to, it's a hard situation and it's something that you don't necessarily think will happen to you, but it's a great thing to think about. If this happens, how would I want my partner to bring this up to me? Who are the people in my lives, whether that's my doctor or a nurse practitioner or somebody, a friend, a partner, who are the people in my lives who I can go to if this happens with me, and think about that ahead of time. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Lauren, for that vulnerability. And it is so, so, so important and a topic that's not talked about enough. So I'm glad that we have the space here to talk about it, and hopefully everyone can know the signs and set themselves up for support and, to get what they need in that phase. Okay, we have 2 questions that are both really great. One, I'm going to take this one first because it's related to PPD. I have PPD and didn't realize it. And unfortunately, it seems like my healthcare provider has a max time of leave they can give me. How do I advocate for myself if I need more time? Or how do I know when I stop having PPD? So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess like in terms of advocating for yourself, if you're struggling emotionally, I think that that's something that that this group can chime in on. I think in terms of like the PPD, actual part of like whether you have PPD or not, probably working with your healthcare provider. I don't, I don't know if any of us are qualified to speak to that necessarily, but it's probably just a gut feeling. And I thankfully haven't experienced it, but if any of the panelists can speak to, tips for advocating for yourself if you are struggling mentally, emotionally after when you're coming back from leave.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'm really sorry that that's happening to you, and just know that it's something that many people experience. Advocate for yourself for more time off. Understand your policies in the workplace. You want to make sure you talk to your HR manager. You want to make sure that you get a doctor's note to give to your current employer. And you want to explore reasonable accommodations. And if you absolutely have to, you can, you could contact a lawyer to see what legal protections you have under the National Partnership for Women and Family, which is a legal protections group that can help you, navigate that.
One thing that also helped me, slightly unrelated, but I had pregnancy loss at 17 weeks, and my OB put me with a psychiatrist. And so I think it was like, sometimes you need more help than what your OB can give you. And honestly, I wish I would have done that with my other pregnancies too, because I think my OB was like, here's some, Wellbutrin, have a great day. But really, I think sometimes it was a little bit more than that. And so a psychiatrist, especially one who's related to like prenatal and postpartum, can really help you identify what needs to happen and then work in concert with your healthcare provider, whether that's your OB, your general doctor, that can work together. So you may want to ask for a reference there.
That's such a good point. I'm really sorry, Elizabeth, that you
We're
went
getting
through.
so vulnerable. I didn't really, when I met the psychiatrist, it just was that like opened up a whole new world for me because it was so helpful. Way more helpful than my OB ever was. And not to
Yeah.
say that, but that's just not what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you as well for sharing that. And I think that was a really wonderful answer of both, both practical approach of working with the right provider, but also, figuring out what you can advocate for yourself with in the workplace. So, um, and another question we have here, and I think Anna, this is perfect for you. I ended up taking a longer leave than intended with no backup plan to return to work. I work in a fairly traditional field. In a rural area, and I'm struggling between being upfront about why I have a long gap, 1 year plus on my resume, or if I should couch it in some way that hides the family reasoning of my leave. So I know, Anna, this is your specialty of helping people, re-enter, and Elizabeth, helping people re-enter the workplace after maybe taking a longer gap than the typical US maternity leave.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would encourage you to be upfront about it, own the narrative, and own your story, and give as much information as you want to give without getting too much into the details. So saying something like, I took a pause, it was the right thing for my family at the time. I'm really excited to get back to paid work, and then focus on all the reasons why you are amazing and why you add to wherever you're going next, and focus on the value that you bring. I have an acronym, depth, that I use to talk about, so I work with returners of all different lengths, whether you've got just the parental leave or whether you've got 23 years is the longest person that we've worked with, 23-year career pause. And I use the acronym DEPTH to talk about all the value that they bring. And so D stands for drive and determination, showcase how you're committed, you're excited about returning to paid work, showcase how you've leveraged your drive and determination in your unpaid work. E stands for fresh energy. When you're getting back to paid work after a career pause, you bring a fresh set of fresh energy to the team. You're excited to be there. All the returners I work with are so looking forward to getting back to paid work, that they bring that fresh energy. P stands for prior professional experience. T stands for thought-provoking questions, because when you've got a different set of experiences, you come with a different set of questions that people might not see. And H stands for heart, because as we mentioned earlier, caregiving really hones those empathetic skills for you. And so that's just a tip of the iceberg of all the things that returners bring. And I love to help people figure out what their unique value is and how to convey that to an employer.
Anna is truly the best. And also check out the Pivot Pack, because that's like the best place for you to talk about all these things with all these other returners. Sorry, I'm plugging Pivot Pack. But the other thing is, think about what you've done during that break to continue learning. So did you upskill, or can you upskill? Like, what did you do? Well, I took a career break. I was out of the paid workforce, but I did spend time volunteering and organizing, or, doing the accounting for a charity. So think about like what you've done in that career break that still kind of puts you on the path towards skills that you want to bring to the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. We work with people who've implemented payment processing systems for their schools and nonprofits. One of my clients organized a bus route for her kids' school. We've worked with people who fundraised millions of dollars for their communities. I mean, you've got a lot of skills that are highly transferable to the workforce, and sometimes you can't see them because they're things. Lots of times people are like, "Well, I don't know, I just did that." And you don't recognize it as a strength in yourself, but I love to help people see that.
And we do just have a couple more minutes of our scheduled time. So I want to make sure to announce the giveaway winner in case anyone does have a hard stop. And then we will have, 2 or 3 more minutes for the remaining questions. So my colleague Laura helped me pick a random participant during the event. And so Kirsten Mann, congratulations. We will follow up with you via email to connect you with Lauren, Anna, and Elizabeth for your prizes. So yay, thank you. And thank you for joining. And yeah, I think we have time for a couple more questions. So Oh, one of them is just that they loved that acronym, Anna. And so if you maybe you can add that to our shared doc so I can include it in our follow-up DM. Or if there's like a link to it on your website, I can include that as well and make sure that everyone gets that. So great, answered that one. Okay, and then Gabriella's asking, how can I deal with leaders that do not understand the necessity of pumping, or leaders that find ways to make the workplace uncomfortable due to my new needs? So of course we've covered that you are absolutely entitled to pump during your workday and protected by the Pump Act, but I would love to hear from maybe Melissa or anyone else that has tips on how to navigate when maybe your employer is not being respectful of those protections.
Yeah, this is a really great question, and unfortunately something that I experienced at my last company, not here at Willow. It was just a blatant like disregard for times on my calendar where I had pumping breaks and my calendar was completely open, scheduling meetings over, saying Melissa is off camera for this reason during the meeting. It was definitely awkward. And it really, at first it really bothered me. I think this is another time where I kind of sat back and was like, is this really what I want to be doing? Is this the support that I deserve and need as a mom? And that's kind of where I started to really take a hard look at what I wanted to do with my career and kind of the direction I wanted to go, which ultimately led me into my current job at Willow, which is, just a world of difference. So I think really being honest with yourself and open with yourself. But if you do, have these situations at work, you should be able to, respectfully have a conversation, schedule a meeting with your supervisor or whoever it's happening with, and make sure it's known. Just, flat out your feelings. No, I know sometimes these discussions can get heated, but really practicing in advance, I think, helped me when I was going into these, because of course at first you are very angry or upset or you feel awkward, but these are your rights and you are feeding your baby. So sometimes just reminding, maybe this person has never breastfed or pumped, or they don't understand what it takes. I kind of like spelled out exactly what I would do during a pump break and how long it took and how many times I had to do it a day and how I was storing milk. That kind of, they sat back and they were like, that is another job. That is a full-time job. So I think laying out exactly what you're doing, in just like a flat out way is a super, super important thing to do if you feel like you're not getting your needs met, because legally you should have your needs met and you are doing something for your child that is, so beneficial. So you should not feel in the slightest that you cannot continue your pumping and breastfeeding journey.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that and that great answer. We have covered all the questions that came in and we are right at time. So great job, everyone. Thank you again to all of the panelists for all of your insights today and just being a hype squad in general. I know everyone, myself included, really appreciated it, and hearing your diverse perspectives. And there's Lily, do you want to say something?
Amazing. I'm like crying, honestly, like hearing the vulnerability. I needed this conversation for sure.
Well, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you in the Auggie community. And we have a ton of virtual events coming up over the next few weeks and months. So take a look at our event calendar. If you want to join us again, we'd love to have you. And thanks again to all of our panelists. And we will be following up via direct message in Auggie with info from all of our partners, so that you can follow up with them if needed or just get information on their services.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.